People gunned down inside of the King Soopers supermarket yesterday afternoon, including police officer Eric Talley, first policeman to respond. No additional details are available. The suspect is alive, and no details on the killer available. If that comes through in the course of the show, I will update you about that. In Germany, the lockdown has been extended to April the 18th, saying, Angela Merkel saying that we are basically in a new pandemic. Even as the United States sees normalcy returning, Germany and much of the other areas of the EU, which screwed around and did not immediately authorize the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine or prepare, as Israel did, for importation of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, they got lost in the bureaucracy of Brussels and tried to punish the UK for leaving, and the people who are being punished are, in fact, the members of the EU states, the people of Europe, screwed over by a bureaucratic government that doesn't know how to respond. Merkel is going to leave her endless tenure in office a complete and shattered failure. In Great Britain, Boris Johnson, who led the United Kingdom out of the EU and is leading them in a robust response against the COVID after nearly dying of it himself, has announced that retirement home staff are either going to have the vaccination or they're going to be fired. I 100% agree with that. People can make a personal choice to live dangerously without the vaccine, and it is very dangerous. It's not a very smart choice. It's a dumb choice, actually, not to get vaccinated. Really dumb. But it's your choice. It's like, swimming 100 yards out to sea in a riptide. You might get back to ground. That's fine. Might be a little bit thrilling, but you don't have a right to take somebody with you. And if you're working in a retirement home, those people do not have, or a nursing care facility, those people don't have a choice to be there. And you don't have a choice. In Great Britain, and I hope it's adopted by the states, as a matter of licensure, you ought not to be allowed. The border is completely out of control. Amid surge, according to NBC News, border agents in Rio Grande are now releasing migrants without court dates. Thousands of illegal immigrants are being released without court dates. What does that mean? That means they're being released. Welcome to America. Have a nice life. That's what it means. Eventually they might get recaptured by ICE in a raid somewhere and then deported. Some of them will be deported after violent crime, but they've given up. Why have they given up? They're overwhelmed by children. There are new pictures released by Henry Cuellar, Democrat of Texas, of one of the Biden jails for kids. And the Donna facility they don't have bars, they have plastic zippers. So you're zipped in. Can't imagine it's good for the kids. Can't imagine it's good for anyone. They repealed all the Trump policies, and now they have thousands of kids in tents, plastic tents inside of buildings. A disaster. Meanwhile, Biden sent top U.S. officials to visit Mexico and Guatemala to beg for help. All the agreements were in place when Trump left. Washington Post, Biden team searching for new ways to slow border surge. They might want to finish the wall. It might occur to them. Meanwhile, they're also drawing up plans to spend $3 trillion in new spending on the economy, according to the New York Times' Jim Tankersley. They just spent $4 trillion after last year's. They just spent $2 trillion after last year's $4 trillion. So they want to spend $10 trillion in the space of a year and a half. It will destroy the economy. It will ignite inflation beyond anything you've ever imagined. Biden's advisors plan to recommend the effort be broken into pieces by Congress tackling infrastructure before turning to a second package that would include more people-focused proposals like free community college, universal pre-kindergarten, and a national paid leave program. The first phase will include $1 trillion in spending on the construction of roads, bridges, rail lines, ports, electric vehicle charging stations, and improvements in the electric grid. What's the $2 trillion for? What I know that 10% of it was for COVID, for vaccines and schools. There are trillions of dollars given away to state and local governments already. Why don't they use it for the infrastructure? Most important story of the day, U.S. and its allies have sanctioned China over the genocide of the Uyghurs in a collective action. Now, I had Josh Rogan on yesterday. His brand new book, Chaos Under Heaven, is a must-read. The best thing you can do to help stop the genocide of the Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in Xinjiang province is to buy and get smart about the Chinese Communist Party and its ruthlessness. From the Wall Street Journal, the U.S., Canada, and allies in Europe leveled sanctions against Chinese officials over the repression of mainly Muslim Uyghurs in a coordinated blacklisting that is part of the Biden administration's efforts to forge a coalition against Beijing. The sanctions came from the U.S., Canada, and UK. They were supported by Australia and New Zealand. And China dismissed the allegations and immediately retaliated by blacklisting 10 European lawmakers as well as several think tanks and academics, prohibiting them from business with or travel to China. Boo-hoo. Separately, Mr. Blinken and the foreign ministers of Canada and the United Kingdom said in a statement that the evidence of China's abuses in Xinjiang is overwhelming. It cited satellite imagery, Chinese government documents, eyewitness accounts. The foreign ministers of Australia and New Zealand then issued a separate statement in support of the sanctions. Everybody knows they're killing off the Uyghurs. They're doing so in 100 different ways. They tried to do so quietly, but it's happening. It's a genocide. It's like the Jews in Germany in the early 30s. The only exception to the Goodwin's Law, never bring up the Nazis or Hitler, is actually when people are acting like the Nazis and Hitler. And the Chinese Communist Party is doing what Joe Stalin did with his gulag, and he's doing what Hitler did with his gulag, murdering an entire ethnic group, wiping them out. At the same time, John Kerry's announced he's holding a meeting with the Chinese on climate change. Now, this does not compute. Wall Street Journal, U.S.-China climate envoys to meet despite frosty Alaska talks. That should be John Kerry to meet with Chinese counterpart despite genocide of Uyghurs. John Kerry doesn't care. John Kerry doesn't care about the Uyghurs. Doesn't care about Hong Kong. Doesn't care about tech theft. Doesn't care about influence operations by China in the United States. Obviously has not read Josh Rogan's book. He wants to talk about climate change. Now, I had a great conversation with John Kerry. I'm the only person in America to have read his memoir. Really. I read every page. I mean, that's not counting his publisher, his editor, although I doubt his editor read every page because it does not appear to have been edited. And we had a fine conversation. But that was before we knew there was a genocide in China and before they cracked down on Hong Kong. Climate change is, he says, an existential threat. Perhaps it is. I think we'll adapt. But you know what's an existential threat? The genocide of the Uyghurs is an existential threat to the Uyghurs. So, John Kerry, really unbelievable. Saudi Arabia has a new ceasefire deal. It's been rejected by the Houthis. The United Kingdom has a new Defense Department budget that is transferring over to all new weaponry. Supreme Court had a very interesting case yesterday on property rights. Keep your fingers crossed. Something big might happen there. Dwayne's very bummed out because Ellen DeGeneres has lost 1 million viewers. Dwayne's favorite show, he came in this morning and said, can we put in a plug for Ellen DeGeneres? She's lost 1 million viewers because she's mean. Dwayne has a list of shows. He likes Dr. Phil, Live with Kelly and Ryan, Maury Povich, Kelly Clarkson, Rachel Ray, Tamron Hill, and Jerry Springer's former security guard, Steve Wilkos. But most of all, Dwayne likes Ellen. And he wants Ellen back. And I can't help her. Dwayne will have to do without. Microsoft is reopening its office. When they say come back, don't miss it. Come right back here to the Hugh Hewitt Show.